Donnie and Dolly. The team is supported by ableauctions.ca. Closing your business? We can help.
Tuesday, and all of our guests today brought to you by Delaney's OK Tire in Langley. Clayton and Brett Delaney are second-generation owners, and they handle all the major tire brands, as well as custom wheels and suspension, leveling kits, and lifts, and full mechanical services. 198363 Fraser Highway in Langley. Delaney's OK Tire in Langley. As we bring in TSN Scouting Director Craig Button. Craig, thanks for doing this, sir. How are you?
I am great today. How are you gentlemen today?
Lovely. Very well, very well. The Canucks Young Stars tournament, or Young Stars Classic, wrapped up yesterday. Vilmer Ulrichsen, goals in back-to-back games, 6-6. Why are you laughing? Because you think
I'm looking at Craig.
You think Craig's not going to know anything about Vilmer, but
Craig knows every player on earth,
and he's going to blow you away with his knowledge here. 6'6", Swedish winger, fourth-round draft pick back in 2023 for the Canucks. What can you tell us about him? He showed some promise in Penticton.
Yeah, I love that phrase, showed some promise. And Rick, I don't want to disappoint you. I don't know all the players, but I do know Vilker. And it's interesting when you're looking at players and the word promise, and you can tie it in with potential and whatnot. And certainly he's got a lot of confidence playing with the puck. He's not somebody that's unsure of himself when he has the puck on his stick. He knows where to go and how to get open and when to get open. And with a young player who's that size, you need to be really patient with him. You need to understand that there's going to be what I would call growing pains, and not growing pains in terms of what he's going through, just in terms of him getting comfortable with who he is, what he is. What I have seen over years with bigger players is that, they might be a little bit awkward. They're maturing. They're trying to get their legs underneath them. But at the same time, as that process takes place, their confidence grows. And then as their confidence grows, their productivity grows. And it becomes a really strong cycle of improvement, of productivity, and to your term, showing promise. And I think that's exactly what he's done. It's easy to look at a player when he's younger and go, oh, geez, skating's a little bit off. Listen, if his skating was better in his draft year, he would have gone in the top 10. If he was a little bit more coordinated, he wouldn't be a fourth-round draft pick. He'd be a much higher draft pick. So when you're looking at these players, it's about trying to assess them and then try to think about, okay, what could this player look like in a year, in 3 years, in 5 years' time, and then looking at it through that lens. And I think that the Vancouver Canucks, in drafting him and then now seeing where he's at, have every reason to have optimism for his chances to continue to progress and potentially be an NHL player.
Elias Pettersson, the defenseman, was physical up in Penticton. He also scored. Where do you see him ending up? Can you see him making that big jump to the NHL one day?
Oh, yeah. I don't have any, I guess, I could say I have no doubt. I mean, what I see in Pettersson is a player who's territorial, who defends hard, who's going to make life really challenging for any opponent that wants to think that they're going to have an easy time in Vancouver's defensive zone. He asserts himself physically. He's smart. And I think one of the really positive things about Pettersson, he knows his game. He doesn't try to be something he isn't. And when I consider the work, and I'm going to just go to the blue line, I consider the work that Adam Foote and Sergei Gonchar have done with the Blue Liners in Vancouver. I think that Pettersson is just another player that is going to be celebrated, that's going to be valued for what he brings. Yeah, listen, I know every single player would love to be Quinn Hughes. Unfortunately, the Quinn Hugheses of the world are very rare. So you need lots of different types of players to round out your lineup. And I think Pettersson, he knows how to play with good players. He knows how to make life uncomfortable for opponents. And literally, I have no doubt that he'll be an NHL player and a real good, competitive, hard player for the Vancouver Canucks.
Craig, training camp start just in a couple of days around the circuit. You've seen the changes teams have made across the summer. Who's your top pick for the top team in Canada right now? How are you breaking down the Canadian teams?
Well, I don't think there's any question that it's Edmonton, Vancouver, and the Toronto Maple Leafs. I mean, the Montreal Canadiens are still very much in rebuild. Ottawa trying to find their way. Winnipeg has had some really good regular season success, but have fallen on some difficult times come playoff. And then you have the Calgary Flames who are in a rebuild as well. But the Vancouver Canucks lost in Game 7 last year to the team that went to the Stanley Cup Final, and so I think that the Vancouver Canucks are a very good team. I think they're a contending team, just as is the Edmonton Oilers, and they're both in the Pacific Division. I think Vegas is going to be a better team. Or that should be a better team. I think they're going to be another solid team in the coming year. And that to me is a real challenge for all the teams in the Pacific Division. But in Canada, I think it's Vancouver, Edmonton, and Toronto. And certainly the hopes in Toronto are always high, the change in coaching with Craig Berube. But we saw how good the Vancouver Canucks can be. We saw how good the Edmonton Oilers can be. I don't think that's changing this coming season.
Every team in the league yesterday was saying, geez, I wish we could get Sidney Crosby at that price tag. I was watching you last night. Your thoughts on Sidney Crosby and his contract?
Yeah, I think that Sidney's wired to win. I mean, that's ultimately where he's at. And I think that we can look at the value that Sidney Crosby brings vis-a-vis his contract. There's no question that that's significant. But I believe that Sidney Crosby is satisfied through the dialogue he's had with the general manager, Kyle Dubas, that the work that needs to be done to build the team, to make it stronger, and Sidney wants to win a Stanley. Everybody wants to win a Stanley Cup. That goes without saying. He wants to see the team contend. Missing the playoffs the last 2 seasons leaves a really bad taste in his mouth, as it does in the Pittsburgh Penguins fans' mouths. And I think Sidney is satisfied that the work going forward, it's not insignificant, but the reason, he loves Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh identifies with 87 with Pittsburgh. But I think that a big part of this is his understanding and belief that the team can move back into contending status. And I think that is significant for Sidney Crosby and his belief in doing it. He didn't sign an 8-year contract.
Yeah.
He's got this year on his old contract in 2 years. So, that really seems to be what the window is, what Sidney understands it to be, and you go from there.
2-year extension, $8.7 million per, continuing with those financial numbers. Hey, I saw this on your Twitter account. Impressive video. What do the Montreal Canadiens have in 5'10" defenseman Lane Hutson?
I've watched Lane for the last 4 years, and all Lane does at every level. Well, let me just set it up for you. Prior to moving to another level, there's massive questions about Lane Hutson. And then what Lane has shown at every level, at every single level, including 2 games at the NHL level last April when he signed with the Montreal Canadiens, is that there's no level too high for him. His brain is outstanding. His edge work, his skating, deception, and everything in the game is outstanding. Like any player, not named McDavid or not named McKinnon or not named Crosby, they need support and they need elements and from other players to help them be at their best. But to me, Lane just has so many outstanding attributes, and I'm waiting to see the level of hockey where not only, it's not just about him being able to play at. I'm waiting to see the level of hockey where he cannot excel at, because to date, I haven't seen it.
You covered Vilmer Arliksson, Sidney Crosby, Elias Pettersson, the defenseman, Lane Hutson. You see, Rick, you can throw anything at any player on the planet at Craig, and he has no problem with it.
Number 1 in this country. It doesn't matter.
On the planet.
Craig Button.
He's the best.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you very much.
Thanks for this, Craig. We'll talk to you next week.
Yeah, thanks.